I rise today to oppose Senate Bill 2280, a bill to approve the Keystone XL pipeline. The Keystone pipeline would carry 830,000 barrels per day of tar sands oil bound for global markets from Canada to refineries along the Gulf Coast. And this is one of the most important points about Keystone, which is that it does nothing for American energy security. It takes tar sands oil from Canada, moves it through the United States and makes it available to global markets. It does nothing for American energy security. But more than that, it represents a massive endorsement of a fossil fuel economy where we ought to be focusing on transitioning to clean energy. There are many reasons to vote against this bill, but I will focus on four. First, the oil from tar sands are exceptionally dirty, and I think for the American public out there, they have a basic instinct that oil is not the cleanest of energy resources, but tar sands oil are really in a special category. And we don't need this oil enough to justify its impacts on health and climate change. Mining tar sands oil is nothing like setting up a rig and drilling a hole in the ground. Tar sands are dirty in terms of the land destroyed, dirty in terms of the water wasted and contaminated, and dirty in terms of the amount of energy needed to mine, transport, and process the oil. Getting and using oil from tar sands puts far more carbon pollution in the atmosphere than conventional oil. And when tar sands are near the surface, they are dug up along with all of the surrounding earth, including the forests that sit on top. Tar sands are a mixture of sand, clay, water, and a gooey form of petroleum that resembles tar. Think of it as a mixture of dirt and molasses, and imagine trying to separate the dirt from the molasses. If you think that sounds difficult, you are correct. After being mined, the thick, sludgy mixture that remains is transported to facilities that separate the oil using multiple water and energy-intensive rinse cycles. The water used in this process becomes contaminated, of course, with toxins and is no longer suitable for other uses. And oil companies use massive amounts of water to mine the tar sands. In 2011, tar sands mining in Canada used more water than the entire city of Toronto uses annually, representing a significant new strain on freshwater resources. This is simply not the direction to go in. We need to fight climate change and promote bold, clean energy solutions that don't present a constant danger of harming our health, our drinking water, and our economy. Why are we spending time today trying to approve something that quite literally takes us in the wrong direction? This brings me to the second reason this pipeline ought to be rejected. It will have a direct negative impact on the people and the communities that live in its path. The 875-mile route of this proposed pipeline has over 50 river crossings, including the Yellowstone River in Montana, which is still recovering from a major crude oil leak by an ExxonMobil pipeline in 2011. That pipeline's leak contaminated 85 miles of the river and its floodplain, placing an enormous burden on families and the businesses that depend on it. Pipelines transport oil, but they also leak regularly. The existing Keystone pipeline system for Canadian tar sands leaked 14 times during its first year of operation, with one incident leaking 21,000 gallons. In its environmental review, the State Department estimated that the proposed Keystone XL pipeline would fail several times a year. In 2010, a 6-foot break in a pipeline carrying oil tar sands spilled nearly 1 million gallons of crude oil into the Kalamazoo River in Michigan. This was one of the largest inland oil spills in the United States history and also one of the costliest, with cleanup costs totaling over $1 billion. Households in the area were evacuated and told not to drink the water. 35 miles of the river were contaminated, and the cleanup continued 4 years after the spill. One of the most troubling things about this spill and any future spills from Keystone XL is that the companies who own the oil take advantage of a loophole in the law that lets them avoid paying their fair share into the National Oil Spill Liability Trust Fund. This trust fund has been in place for 30 years, and the money in it helps to respond to and clean up after oil spills. Every barrel of oil produced or imported in the United States is charged 8 cents, and the money goes into a trust fund. It's basically an insurance policy for events when companies are unable to pay for spill cleanup or in an emergency response situation. It makes sense. What doesn't make sense is that due to this loophole, the oil from the tar sands in Canada is exempt from that 8-cent fee. Why would we vote for a bill that circumvents executive review of an international pipeline carrying the dirtiest oil in the world, produced in Canada, and headed mostly for world markets, and a bill that does nothing to close a loophole exempting oil from tar sands from having to pay a fee for environmental cleanup? In other words, how can this bill ask so little of the oil companies while giving them so much? A third reason to reject this bill and this pipeline is the impact on climate change. The facts plainly show that we must reduce carbon pollution, not add to it, to take control of our energy future and build a clean energy economy. We've got to go forward, not backwards. If we're serious about leaving our children a healthy world, we'll vote no and reject this pipeline. We know a majority of the public supports bold action to solve climate change. In recent years, no single issue related to fossil fuels and climate change has commanded the level of civic engagement as the Keystone XL pipeline. Countless rallies, public hearings in cities and towns across the proposed route, lawsuits and debates in Congress reveal how much passion there is about this issue. In fact, the pipeline was booed so loudly when advertised on the Jumbotron at a Nebraska football game that the university cut sponsorship ties with TransCanada, the owner of the proposed pipeline. Finally, Madam President, the bill is flawed in terms of its process, not only because of what it seeks to do, but also because how it seeks to do it. The bill would circumvent existing executive branch review. Because the Keystone XL pipeline would cross international boundaries, the State Department is responsible for reviewing and deciding if a permit is in the national interest. The way it is currently written, this bill could potentially limit state and local siting decisions, as well as some legal challenges. It attempts to approve a pipeline that doesn't even have a finalized route, but does have lawsuits pending against it in the Nebraska Supreme Court. Congress should be focusing on the things that will have a positive impact on the economy and jobs. We've got to pass immigration legislation. We need to pass a defense authorization. Our CR expires on December 11th. We need to move to the regular order in terms of appropriations. We should not be moving forward with Keystone XL. In my view, this is about whether we're committed to the past or committed to the future. This is about whether we're going to double down on fossil fuels or we're going to take bold action in terms of moving forward with clean energy. I urge my colleagues to oppose this legislation, and I yield the floor.